You think you know what happened between Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed? You don't. And what I'm about to tell you is going to make you question everything you thought you understood about loyalty, respect, and what it really means to survive in that ring. Because while everyone's sitting here playing Monday morning quarterback, acting like they've got it all figured out, the truth is so much darker and so much more justified than any of you are willing to admit. And yeah, I said justified. You heard that right. So before you come at me in the comments, before you start typing away with your hot takes, sit down, shut up, and let me break down exactly why Bron Breakker had every single reason to do what he did to Bronson Reed. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're Bron Breakker. You come from wrestling royalty. The Steiner name means something. It's not just a legacy, it's a standard. It's a bar set so high that most people would crumble under that pressure. But not Bron. He carried that weight. He honored that name. And he built his own identity brick by brick, suplex by suplex, win by win. His father, Rick Steiner. His uncle, the legendary Scott Steiner. Big Papa Pump himself. These aren't just names in a history book. These are icons who redefined what it meant to be an athlete in professional wrestling. They brought a level of intensity and legitimate toughness that made other wrestlers second-guess their career choices. They walked into locker rooms and commanded respect without saying a word. They revolutionized tag team wrestling with the Steiner brothers, delivering moves that doctors said were impossible, that physics said shouldn't work, but they made it look effortless. And Bron didn't just inherit that legacy. He earned the right to carry it forward through countless hours in the gym, through studying every match his family ever had, through proving night after night that he wasn't riding coattails, but blazing his own trail. Now imagine you're doing everything right. You're putting on match-of-the-night performances week after week, leaving everything in that ring, your blood, your sweat, your body sacrificed for the entertainment of millions. You're being professional backstage, shaking hands, showing respect to veterans who paved the way and rookies who are just starting their journey. You're studying tape until your eyes burn, perfecting your craft down to the smallest detail, pushing your body to the absolute limit in the gym, because you know that being a Steiner means you can't just be good, you have to be exceptional. You have to be a genetic freak, as your uncle would say. You're following the code, the unwritten rules that keep this business functioning, that maintain order in what could easily descend into chaos. And then here comes Bronson Reed, a man who's supposed to be your colleague, your peer, someone who understands the grind and the sacrifice, someone who should know better. And what does he do? He crosses lines that should never be crossed. Lines that exist for very good reasons. See, this wasn't about some scripted rivalry cooked up in a boardroom by writers who've never taken a bump in their lives, who've never felt the canvas against their back or tasted their own blood. This wasn't about championship gold or main event spots or who gets the pyro for their entrance or whose face goes on the promotional posters. This wasn't about worked heat or building to a pay-per-view match that would draw money. This was personal. This was about disrespect at the highest level, the kind of disrespect that cuts deeper than any physical wound. Bronson Reed didn't just step on Bron's toes, didn't just accidentally offend him or make a mistake in the heat of competition. He stomped on everything Bron stands for, everything the Steiner name represents, decades of excellence and toughness and innovation in professional wrestling. And when Bron finally snapped, when he finally said enough is enough and delivered that brutal, unforgiving assault that left Reed looking like he'd been hit by a freight train, looking like he'd gone 12 rounds with a heavyweight champion and lost every single one, everyone wants to act shocked. Everyone wants to clutch their pearls and pretend like Bron's the villain in this story, like he's the one who crossed the line. But where was that energy when Reed was running his mouth? Where was that outrage when Reed was pushing buttons that he knew he shouldn't push? When Reed was deliberately provoking someone who comes from a family legendary for their intensity and their willingness to back up every word with action? Let me tell you what really went down, and this is straight from Bron's own words. The unfiltered truth that most people don't want to hear because it doesn't fit their narrative, because it requires them to think critically instead of just reacting emotionally. He said Reed had been testing him for weeks, maybe even months, a slow burn of disrespect that built gradually. Little comments here, little shoves there, the kind of disrespect that starts small but festers and builds like a cancer until it explodes into something that can't be contained, can't be reasoned with, can't be negotiated away. In the locker room, Reed would make snide remarks about the Steiner name, about how Bron was only where he was because of who his family was, conveniently ignoring the fact that Bron has more raw talent in his pinky finger than most wrestlers develop in their entire careers, ignoring the fact that family connections might open a door but they don't keep you employed in this business. During interviews, Reed would interrupt, would talk over him, would try to steal his spotlight at every opportunity like some insecure child desperate for attention. And in the ring, during those moments when the cameras weren't on them, during transitions and rest holds when the audience couldn't see clearly, Reed would deliver stiff shots harder than necessary. Potato shots, as they're called in the business, testing Bron's patience, seeing how far he could push before something broke. And in wrestling, you can't let that slide. This isn't a corporate office where you file a complaint with HR and hope someone mediates and everyone shakes hands and moves on. You can't turn the other cheek, because the moment you show weakness, the moment you let someone disrespect you without consequence, you're done in this business. The locker room loses respect for you because everyone's watching. Everyone's taking notes on who's tough and who's soft. Your opponents smell blood in the water and they circle like sharks knowing they can take liberties with you. The fans lose respect for you because they can sense when someone's being walked over, when someone's not standing up for themselves, and they tune out. And most importantly, you lose respect for yourself. And once that's gone, once you can't look yourself in the mirror, your career is over even if you're still wrestling. Bron Breakker refused to let that happen. He refused to let Bronson Reed turn him into a doormat, refused to let Reed tarnish the Steiner name with his petty jealousy and insecurity. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Violence isn't the answer. Handle it professionally. Talk it out like adults. Maybe get management involved. Let them sort it out. Surely there were other options. And to those people I say, have you ever been in a situation where words stopped working? Have you ever been pushed so far, disrespected so thoroughly and consistently that the only language left is action? Have you ever tried every reasonable option only to have them all fail? Because that's where Bron was. He tried the mature route first, contrary to what the critics want you to believe. He tried to handle things behind the scenes like a professional, the way veterans told him to handle conflicts. He went to Reed privately, man to man, no cameras, no audience, and told him straight up that the disrespect needed to stop, that they could coexist peacefully, but the line drawing had to end. Reed laughed in his face, actually laughed, treating it like a joke. Bron tried talking to mutual friends in the locker room, respected veterans who might have Reed's ear, hoping someone could talk sense into him before things escalated beyond repair. Reed doubled down on the behavior, got worse if anything, emboldened by what he perceived as Bron's weakness in seeking peaceful resolution. Bron even tried to just ignore it, to rise above, to focus on his own journey and let Reed self-destruct with his own negativity. But Reed kept pushing. Reed kept provoking. Reed made it his mission to get under Bron's skin because in his twisted mind, if he could break Bron Breakker, if he could make a Steiner lose his cool, then somehow that would validate Reed's own insecurities about his place in the business, about whether he truly belonged at that level. And when you poke a bear long enough, when you disrespect a Steiner long enough, when you mistake patience for weakness and restraint for cowardice, when you confuse mercy with inability, you get exactly what's coming to you. And what came for Bronson Reed was a reckoning unlike anything he'd ever experienced in his career. The attack itself was brutal. I'm not going to sugarcoat it or sanitize it for the sensitive folks out there who think wrestling should be all hugs and high fives. Bron unleashed years of training under the best coaches in the business. Years of pent-up frustration from proving himself constantly. Years of carrying a legacy on his shoulders and the pressure that comes with being born into wrestling royalty. And he channeled all of that into making a statement that echoed through every arena and every locker room in professional wrestling. And what a statement it was, what an exclamation point on months of tension. He didn't just beat Bronson Reed, he dismantled him piece by piece with surgical precision, like a mechanic taking apart an engine. Every suplex was a lesson in respect. Every strike was a punctuation mark on a sentence written in violence. Every time Reed tried to get up, tried to fight back, tried to salvage some dignity from the situation, Bron put him back down with even more intensity, showing no mercy because mercy had already been offered and rejected. This wasn't mindless violence. This was a masterclass in making someone understand that actions have consequences, that words matter, that respect isn't optional. He sent a message to everyone watching, from the front row to the cheap seats, from the locker room to the executive offices, from the veterans to the rookies, that there are consequences for your actions in this business, that you can't just run your mouth and expect no repercussions. That respect isn't given freely like participation trophies at a children's sports league. It's earned through blood and sweat and sacrifice. And disrespect gets handled swiftly and decisively by those who understand what this business truly demands. And here's what really gets me fired up about this whole situation. What makes my blood boil when I see the reaction online and hear what people are saying on podcasts and social media. The double standard is absolutely insane, mind-bogglingly hypocritical. When other wrestlers snap and attack someone, when they lose their cool and unleash violence, we call it intensity. We call it passion. We call it being invested in their character, being committed to the storyline. We make highlight reels set to heavy metal music and we celebrate the fire, the edge, the realness of it, how it felt genuine and unscripted. But when Bron does it, when a Steiner shows that Steiner intensity that the family has been known for since before half these critics were even born, since before the internet gave everyone a platform to share their uninformed opinions, suddenly he's gone too far. Suddenly he needs anger management classes? Suddenly he's dangerous and out of control and needs to be reined in? The hypocrisy is absolutely unreal, and it exposes everything wrong with wrestling discourse today. With how fans pick and choose when to be outraged based on who's involved, rather than what actually happened. This is the same audience that cheers when Stone Cold Steve Austin drops a boss with a stunner, that celebrates when authority figures get their comeuppance. The same audience that pops out of their seats when someone gets put through a table or hit with a chair shot that echoes through the arena. The same audience that chants for blood and violence and extreme rules matches, that made hardcore wrestling a mainstream phenomenon. The same audience that pays premium prices for pay-per-view specifically to see violence and aggression and physical storytelling. But Bron Breakker defends his honor and his family name using the same violence they claim to love, and now he's the bad guy? Now he's taken things too far? Now suddenly everyone's concerned about safety and appropriate conduct? Make it make sense, because I genuinely cannot wrap my head around this level of cognitive dissonance. Either we want our wrestling to feel real and have consequences and showcase genuine emotion, or we want it to be sanitized and safe and completely devoid of the intensity that makes it compelling in the first place. You can't have it both ways. You can't demand authenticity and then complain when you get it. What Bron did was send shockwaves through the entire roster that are still reverberating today, that have fundamentally changed how people interact backstage. Every single person now knows with absolute certainty that Bron Breakker isn't someone you mess with.